Hello and welcome to Profound Words Podcast. In this podcast, we focus on going beyond surface level and getting to things that actually matter in our lives. You can listen to us on Spotify, you can listen to us on Amazon Music, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you can find podcasts. You can also listen to us and watch us on YouTube and Facebook. Now, in today's topic, we are going into basically what is known as 8 levels of consciousness. Now, this is not a concept that I came up with. I wish I would, but it is somebody who was way smarter than I am and way more accomplished than I am, Mr. Nelson Mandela, is who originally came up with these 8 levels of consciousness. Now, why I want to share these 8 levels of consciousness with you is because it gives us a bit of a glimpse into why people do what they do, what stage of consciousness people are in their lives, and what they can do if they want to keep moving up and improving as a better person. Or it can also give you a glimpse about yourself, where you are in your life and where you can be if you so choose to do so. Now, the first thing that I want to sort of preface this whole talk with is if you are in a certain place in your life, right? And you may be dissatisfied with where you are right now because of whatever reason. You may be dissatisfied with your career, with your economics, with your relationships, with your health, with your body. It doesn't matter. The thing is, you understand that you being dissatisfied is the beginning of you getting to a better place. Because if you're satisfied with where you are, there's nowhere to go. There's basically no room for improvement. So if you're dissatisfied right now with where you are, it's a good place to start. And you need to be a little bit forgiving with yourself in order for you to actually achieve something great. Now, I want to get into these 8 levels of consciousness. And as I go along with these, you might start to identify things in your own life, or maybe you start identifying that you've been more into one level or another. Now, these are things that are not, they're not set in stone, like I said. They're not something that you just are born in this level of consciousness, you stick to it, and that's basically your entire coding. But it's not something like that. It's something very different and moving, and it's sort of fluid, right? Where you may be at a certain level of consciousness at one point, and then you drop down to another point, and then it sort of varies from your perspective. It varies from your own personal development. It varies from the work that you've done with yourself and with your own mind and with your own perceptions and beliefs and all that sort of stuff. So in order for you to really get the most out of this episode of the podcast, you need to be very open to the idea that none of this is set in stone and none of this is permanent and none of this is um, basically a death sentence where there's no room to move or improve. So, first of all, we're going to get into the levels, and each level sort of leads to the next level. And each level also comes with color coding, which is a little bit organized and neat. But the reason why I'm talking about the colors is because I want to give you a very clear picture of the difference between the levels. Every level is absolutely different in their reaction and how people behave, and you're going to notice this as we go along. Now, the first level that I'm going to talk about here is color beige. Beige is not a very sexy or attractive color, but it is the color of the first level. Now, the first level is a survival instinct. Okay, it's just completely instinct driven. Now, this is different from reacting sort of in a selfish way because you're trying to preserve yourself or keep yourself safe. This is purely instinctual. This is like the level of if you're on the forest alone with no food and no shelter and you just need to survive. That is that level of consciousness. Level one is that beige level of consciousness of pure survival, pure instinct. You're not even thinking about yourself. You're not even thinking about other people. You're just in self-preservation mode. And luckily for most of us, especially if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this on the podcast, then you are probably not in this level of consciousness very often. And in fact, if you've grown enough, right, past the age of 2, maybe you're not living in this level of consciousness constantly. But if you are maybe living in a treehouse in the middle of nowhere, maybe you're not even in that situation. You're in level one because you have a shelter now. You have a sort of a plan of where to go, what to do. But that sort of instinctual driven survival mode is that level one of consciousness. Now, once you get over that and you actually fulfill your needs for security, for shelter, for food, for some level of certainty, then you move on to level two. And level two is purple. Now, purple is basically tribal order. It gives us a little bit of a social dynamic now, but instead of getting into a social dynamic to basically connect with other people and to serve other people and contribute to them, it's still based on survival. It's still very much selfish because you're around other people, around the tribe, not to help with the tribe or not to help those people or not expressly with that purpose, but with the purpose of preserving your own life and staying alive yourself and getting the resources that those people have. So it's not something that is born out of altruistic intent. It's something that is born out of pure survival. So you may be scared of the elements, you may be scared of your own survival, so you get around other people that have those resources that could help you survive and preserve yourself. So that's that level two of consciousness. Now, as I go along with these levels, you might start to recognize also points maybe in history where this has been true and where this has gotten us to certain places, but not further. And the further we went along technologically, or the further we went along in terms of understanding seasons, understanding agriculture and technology, we start to level up sort of in these levels of consciousness. But instead of looking at it just as a historical piece or maybe a way to understand historical advancement in human history, we can use this also to understand ourselves, understand how we operate, and understand how we might use this in our lives to better ourselves or better understand ourselves and other people. So you may know somebody who hangs around so many other people and does what other people want them to do. They might not even like it, they might not even agree with it, but they do it so they can survive. And in fact, or it might not even be connected with their survival per se, but it might be something that is extremely important to them, to where the point that if they don't have that validation from that in group, they feel like they're going to die. It sort of happens a lot to every single one of us when we go through puberty and adolescence. Our peer group becomes so important and their validation becomes so important that if we don't have it, we feel like we're going to physically die, even though that's totally not the case. Especially we learn that afterwards. But for many people, that is still much a situation. Some people feel like if they don't go to church every Sunday, they're going to absolutely die, and with the added bonus of going to hell. So if you are in that situation where you find yourself always trying to please other people, always trying to follow the rules of said group, even if you don't agree with that group, even if you don't agree with their principles or whatever the hell they're doing, but you feel like you have to mold yourself to that group, then you're in this level of consciousness, level two of purple consciousness. Now, level three is once you get past that survival need of the tribal order, then you start focusing on yourself and what you can do and sort of improve yourself. But this sort of swings the pendulum in the other direction, as it sort of happens with human beings all the time. And we're actually living in that situation right now where the pendulum swings the other way completely and we get a little bit extreme. And so it completely becomes about self adulation. It sort of becomes a narcissistic situation where you yourself become like this godlike persona where you become everything that's important in your own world, and everything that you do it for yourself and no other person. And you may know somebody like this. You may have had a relationship with somebody like this. I know I personally did. But the thing that we need to do is not condemn these sorts of people, but understand them, understand where they're at. And in order to understand this, we need to put ourselves in that perspective. And in fact, we've all been there. Some people don't move on from that stage. Some people don't stay in that level. Other people move on. But the main thing that we need to understand, we've all been there. And in fact, some people move on from it very early. Some people never move on from it, like I said. But all of us, every single one of us, has gone through that stage. And in fact, you can see it in children all the time. And in fact, you see it especially in children that are 2 years old. This is called the terrible twos. They're called the terrible twos because this is basically the time where we become self-aware and we become sort of the center of the universe because our parents do everything for us, or because our teachers do everything for us, or maybe because we're in a very good or nice in group, or because we're in a nice school, or because we're in a nice whatever. But if you look at children that are that old, some maybe even older, if you look at children, most of the time they're very selfish, and you don't need to teach them how to be selfish. And you need to teach them, in fact, how to be more social. And you need to teach them how to be sharing or compassionate or empathetic with other kids. But you don't need to teach kids how to be selfish. It sort of comes naturally. And for other kids, to be fair, right? For other kids, being empathetic is easier as well. For other kids, they are sort of come with that social dynamic skills from birth. But for most kids, selfishness is sort of the order of the day. And this level of consciousness is red. This red level of consciousness basically is very, very egocentric. And in fact, these first three levels are completely egocentric. And you might argue that the lower level, level two, the purple level, is not egocentric because it's about the tribe, but it's still self-preservation. It's just looking out for yourself through the in-group. It's not really about other people. Now, if we look at the next level, level four, then it becomes about the tribe. It starts to become about everybody else, and it starts to become about society, and it starts to become about building something together as a society, right? And so it becomes about creating something positive for other people. And in order to do that, we need to have order and structure and rules, right? So this level of consciousness, level four, which is blue, is all about order and the absolute. There is no wiggle room in this level of consciousness. There is no flexibility here with the rules. The rules are the rules, and the rules are strict and they're laid out. And if you don't follow the rules, you're not a part of our group. Okay? Now, you may recall in different parts of history, different societies that had this strict structure where you had to follow the rules. Otherwise, you were either ostracized or you were exiled or you were killed, right? But like I said, I sort of keep referencing history in order to bring it back to understanding human behavior. So a way for us to, it's sort of a glance to what we are as people, but we need to bring it back. I keep referencing it, but we bring it back always to understanding ourselves and understanding other people. So if you know somebody, maybe in your own family, or maybe yourself, or maybe somebody immediate, somebody that's very close to you, that has this particular trait, that they're always about the rules and they're always very strict, and you will not bend the rules for anybody. You need to follow the rules exactly to the letter, because if you don't, you feel like you're absolutely going to die, and everything's going to turn to shit, and everything's going to be an unmitigated disaster. So this level 4, right, of blue consciousness is ethnocentric. It is basically based on society. It's based on upholding order. It's based on creating something for everybody else, and for society, for yourself, for your family, for your kids, for your relatives, for your friends, for everybody else, right? So it starts to step away from that egocentric mentality, and it starts to step away from that level of consciousness where everything is about you and self-preservation and survival, and it starts to become about society. It starts to become about building something. And in that building something, we need structure, we need rules, we need to follow these set of rules. And once we follow those set of rules, we can then move on to the next level of consciousness. All of these levels, right, require you to gain something. If you gain that something, then you move on to the next level. But if you never gain that something, you stay stuck in that level. So we need to remember that for you to actually move on and get into a better place in your life. Now, when I mention these levels, it is desirable for you to move up these levels as high as you can. And you need to understand what these levels are. So I hope that you listen to this over and over again, or if you take notes, or if you something, but you apply this to your life in order to gain that extra something that you need to move up to the next level, and to the next level, and to the next level, and where you are more cognizant of yourself, more cognizant of other people, more cognizant of your society, your community, and ultimately lead a better life, become a better leader, a better husband, a better wife, a better daughter, a better son, and become a better member of society. Okay, so we basically got out of that egocentric mentality, of that egocentric level. We got into ethnocentric, and we got into level 4, right? Now we move into level 5. Level 5 is orange. And it's all about also society. It's all about growth. It's all about giving to other people. But this is more about being significant. And it's all about growth. And it's all about expanding and growing and giving and creating big things, right? It's all about achieving. It's all about striving. It's all about drive, right? So this level of consciousness, separate from level 4, is no longer about following the rules exactly, or having a structured society, but it's more about pushing the boundaries. It's more about achieving more. And once we have established a solid base where we have a society that functions, then we can go ahead and push the limits, and sort of wanting to achieve more and do more with our lives, or with society, with our jobs, with our careers, with helping people, with helping develop technology, with helping with bettering health, with many other things, right? Once you have that certainty, once you have that significance, once you have really everything that you need, or all your needs covered, when you've covered your survival needs, when you've covered your emotional needs, when you've covered your mental needs, then it becomes time to understand, what else can I do? What else can I accomplish? And so you start to push the limits and push the boundaries and see where you want to go. And so this happens for a lot of people around the time that they go to college. Because when you go to college, then you start to become your own person. You start to become your own man, your own woman, where you start to develop your true identity. You start to develop your in group and what you're actually going to do or what you're going to contribute to society, and start to push the limits and understand, okay, where are these limits and where else can I take them? You start to envision yourself in a different way. You start to envision society in a different way. You start to envision yourself doing a lot of things or pursuing different careers. So this is the point where a lot of people get into when they are in college, but some people never get there. Like I said, some people stayed in level 2, some people stayed in level 3, some people stayed in level 4. But this is also a big part of, like I said, I keep referencing history to give us a little bit bigger understanding. Um, in history, this is the point where we see big cities and we see big empires that start to develop huge technological advances and huge philosophical advantages and breakthroughs in thought and breakthroughs in science and breakthroughs in all areas of life and society. And it's all about driving, it's all about force, it's all about sort of creating that significance for yourself and for your identity as a nation or your identity as whatever it is. So once you get past the ethnocentric levels of consciousness, we get into world centric levels of consciousness, where it's no longer about a nation, it's no longer about your town, it's no longer about your city, it's no longer about your state, it's no longer about your country, it's about the entire world. You start developing a bigger gaze into not just your town or not just your part of the world, but the entire world. You start to look at more than yourself. You start to look beyond just yourself because you've already gone beyond the level of survival. When it's survival mode, you're not concerned with anybody else. When it's survival mode, you're not concerned with world affairs or global warming or warfare or whatever it is. If you actually look at, and this is sort of, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but if we actually look at the statistics for the majority of people who are actually concerned with, for example, global warming, we look at these statistics, we look at people that are most concerned for these things are people who are well educated, who have stable jobs, stable families, and live in good areas and live in good countries and live in stable economies. These people are more concerned with world issues because they have their needs covered. See, the people who are constantly struggling to get food are not going to care about global warming because their main interest is to preserve themselves, and rightly so, because that's where they need to be. But I say this because it gives us a deeper understanding of these levels and how these levels progress and how these levels actually work. So this level 6 is a green level. And it's about being socially conscious. It's about not just worrying about my needs or the needs of my people or the needs of my country or the needs of my town or my city. It's about worrying about the needs of everybody, of the entire world. Now, in creating this awareness of being more conscious of the entire world, conscious of living beings, the planet, the environment, all these things, we can often lose sight then of the individuals, or we might lose sight of the people that are in these lower levels that are. And also I want to just say that if somebody is in a lower level than you, or if you identify somebody in a lower level than you, it's not so that you can judge them and say, oh, you're just in a lower level. It's so that you can understand and empathize with them and understand what they need, or that what they would need to get up to the next level, right? So it's not so you can judge somebody and say, "Oh no, I'm on a higher level than you." It's so that you can better understand them and understand that people do the best they can do with what they have. That's really what it is. That's really what it boils down to. So if you understand that, then you can actually help a lot of people and empathize with a lot of people in such a way that you're not going to put them off, right? So understanding this and understanding that, by getting into this level 6 of consciousness, we can often lose sight of this. We can often lose sight of the individual needs of people. So we need to understand and use all of these levels. So it's not enough that you maybe get to level 6 and understand, oh, it's not about me, it's about the world, it's about what we can do for everybody else, it's about what we can leave in this planet, what legacy we're going to leave, what we're going to do for the planet and for the animals and for the environment and for Syria and Turkey and Ukraine and Russia, all these things, right? It's not about that. It's about understanding and connecting in a real level with people, right? And once we connect on a real level with people, boy, that completely changes the game, because then we can actually get through with our words. We can actually get through with our messages. We can actually get through to people instead of just barking at them, or instead of just coming down on them, or just condescending to them. We can actually connect on a human level. And that is mainly one of the huge reasons why I started this podcast, is to connect deeper on a human level with so many people, right? So the next level of consciousness, beyond this green level of social consciousness, is spirit centric. And I know that sounds esoteric to some of you. If you find this spirit talk to be esoteric or not scientific enough, you can replace this word with whatever term feels better to you. Maybe sort of identity, or you can replace it with the universe, or whatever it is that makes you more comfortable. But what I'm saying is, don't get lost in the words, and understand the message, understand the core message that I'm trying to deliver to you through these levels of consciousness. Now, these next levels of consciousness are spirit centric. Like I said, level 7 is yellow. And this is integrated flex flow. Now, what does this mean? Instead of something like wishy-washy flex flow, what does this all mean? It means that you integrate all 7 levels that come before it, that come before yellow. All those 7 levels, you integrate them, and you can use them, and you can switch from different levels in order to interact with different people and not completely get consumed by one of them. Meaning that if you are interacting with somebody at a level 2 and you're in that level 8, you're at yellow and they're in red, and they just care about themselves. And maybe you're trying to get them to donate to charity. Then why would they donate to charity if they only care about themselves? Well, you can figure out a way to communicate with that person, because you have the ability to go down to level 2 as well and relate to that person from level 2 why it would be beneficial to them to donate to charity, just to give an example, right? So level 8 is having the ability to basically, so not really code switch, but for lack of a better term, yeah, code switch between these levels to better relate to other people, better understand them, and not get consumed by it. So when I say not get consumed, I basically say that I'm saying that you don't get emotionally invested into this conversation with this person, or you don't get upset, or you don't get hung up on the result of this interaction with this other person in red level, right? You relate to them, you can understand them, you can build rapport with that person, but you don't live in that level. You don't live in red. So you're basically in a position or in a level of consciousness where you can relate to that person without you actually being in that level, if that sort of makes sense. So this is where a lot of us want to be most of the time, because this is something that allows us to build connection, real connection with people, and also gives us an opportunity to contribute beyond ourselves and actually leave something lasting and something that's actually going to be beneficial to society, is by having an integration of all these previous levels. And so we can relate to people who live in green, people who live in orange, people who live in blue, people who live in red, or even in purple, right? So we relate to these people in a better way. We connect with these people in a better way, and we can contribute to them in a better way. So this is where we want to spend most of our time. Now, the next level, level 8, is basically the ultimate goal. It's basically nirvana, okay? And not a lot of people get to this level of consciousness, but it is a very good place to want to strive for. And it is level 8. It is turquoise. It just rolls off the tongue, that even the word sounds nice, turquoise, right? But anyway, turquoise is about being illuminated or an awakened soul or something like that. And I know this, again, sounds very esoteric, but like I said, don't get lost in the words. Look at the message behind it. And so this whole idea is sort of the step beyond level 7, sort of beyond the yellow level, in terms of not just connecting with people at where they're at, but connecting with people more of in a spiritual way, more of being a spiritual leader. Not necessarily you being the Dalai Lama, but you actually sort of being integrated with yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, like I said, some people might react in a different way when I say spiritually, but I personally believe in a spirit. I also believe in souls. I also believe in that sort of stuff. And I also believe that we can connect better with other people in a spiritual level as well, even without words. This is why we have music. This is why we have art. This is why we have painting and sculpture, and why these things are sort of a need that we have as human beings to express ourselves in different ways, not just through talking or not just through videos or audios or stuff like that, or even podcasts, right? So it's a sort of a need of the spirit to express itself, where maybe music is a very good example of this, where maybe you don't even have to say a single word. Maybe you can create a song with no words and just music. And just the music alone will create a very tangible feeling. And you know exactly how the composer was feeling, because you feel it yourself, because it's a spiritual communication. And so in that spiritual communication, that's that next level of consciousness, that level 8 of consciousness, where you no longer are tied to just physical cues or maybe language or just physical movement, or body movement, body posture, all these things, physical cues like facial expressions or the tone of your voice, that sort of situation, but actually going a step beyond that and getting into more of a spiritual connection. I don't know if that makes sense or anything like that. I'm sort of having a hard time right now describing it, but I hope that it sticks here where you understand that it's the integration of all these levels and going and adding a spiritual component to it where we have a spiritual connection with other people. So, like I said, these levels of consciousness are not set in stone. It's not like if you're at a certain level right now, you are going to be stuck there for the rest of your life. No. The idea is that you'll live your life mostly on these higher levels of consciousness, but there are times where you're going to sink down to other levels of consciousness. You may be living at a level 7 most of the time, and then you sink down to a level 2 when you get angry or when you get upset or when something bad happens to you, or you have a bad day at the office, or you have a bad day with your friends or with your family. We all go through struggles all the time. And when we go through struggles, we act in a very different way. And you've probably experienced this where maybe you are having a conversation with a loved one, or maybe you have a conversation with a friend, and you just explode out of the nowhere and you say things that maybe you later regret, or do things that you regret later because you're not being yourself at that moment. You sink down to the level that you feel most comfortable with at that time. Because we do have sort of conditioned responses. We have conditioned levels of consciousness that we use in those moments, right? For some people, when they are frustrated, they go back to level 2 and they get very survival mode and they just want to stick to uh, just self-preservation. And it's not even about fighting. It's not about being like egotistical or anything like that. It's just sort of shelling up and just wanting to be in that survival mode, right? For some people, they go to level 3 in that red state, where it's just about me and it's all about my feelings and why do you think how I feel, and this is me, and you don't care about my things, and me, right? And some people get into really sort of a level 4 as well. Some people get into level 4 when they are upset and they just start repeating the rules. And these are the rules, and you needed to do this, and you didn't, and you messed up, and this is a betrayal, and all these things, right? So understand yourself. Use this to understand yourself. Use this to understand where you tend to fall in this spectrum. When you are in a good state, when you're feeling good, when you're feeling your best, where you are, what you can do to move up when you're feeling good, and where you tend to fall down when you're not feeling good, when you're not at your best, and what you can do in those moments to move up and actually build better relationships, have a better career, have a better health, have get out of bad situations maybe. So I don't know where you are right now in your life, but use this and use these tools in order to get to a better place in your life. Now, I hope that my biggest hope is that this is helpful to you. This is getting to somebody that needs it, that needs to hear it, and that can use it to better their lives. And if it's been helpful to you, if it's been beneficial to you, then subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on social media. If you want to make a contribution to the podcast, you can do so. There's a link in the description, and 15% of those contributions go to preserve the oceans and the ocean wildlife. So hugely appreciate if you make those contributions. The people who have hugely appreciate it. And if you're looking also for coaching one-on-one, there's also a link for that in the description. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.